It was a Thursday evening when everything clicked. I was sitting alone at the kitchen table, swirling a half-empty glass of bourbon, waiting for Emma to come back from her usual women's club meeting. The meeting had been a regular thing every Thursday for months. She'd claimed it was her me time. She always came back late, smelling of perfume and laughing about the amazing talks they'd had. But tonight, a nagging feeling wouldn't leave me alone. Something felt off. I'd tried ignoring it, brushing it off as paranoia, but that wasn't working anymore. Emma had become distant, distracted at home, her phone always face down, her smile no longer reaching her eyes. And whenever I asked about her club, she'd either give a vague answer or brush me off like it was nothing. Tonight, I couldn't shake the urge to confirm that everything was as innocent as she said. I downed the last sip, set the glass down, and decided to go see for myself. Maybe I'd just peek into the club's parking lot, just to ease this uneasy feeling gnawing at me. When I got to the women's club, a place she supposedly loved to attend, the parking lot was nearly empty, the lights dimmed like they were about to close. I walked inside, and a receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. "Excuse me, I'm here to pick up my wife, Emma. She's been attending your Thursday meetings," I said. The receptionist's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, sir, but we haven't seen Mrs. Williams here for, well, it's been several weeks. I'm not sure if she's still a member." My chest tightened. It felt like the ground was giving way beneath me. I forced a smile, thanked the receptionist, and walked back to my car, barely aware of my steps. She hadn't been attending. My mind was racing with scenarios I didn't want to believe, each one worse than the last. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Right there in the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered after a couple of rings, sounding chipper, like nothing was wrong. "Oh, darling. We have such an interesting program at the club tonight," she said, her voice filled with fake excitement. "I might be home a little late." I clenched my jaw, feeling my pulse pounding in my temples. How could she lie to me so easily? I didn't know what was worse, the fact that she was lying or how effortless it sounded coming from her. "All right, honey," I replied, forcing calm into my voice. "Take your time." As soon as the call ended, I sat there in the car, my mind whirling. She was lying, plain and simple. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wasn't just being paranoid or insecure, something real was happening behind my back, and she didn't have a clue I was onto her. A mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal swirled inside me, crashing against each other like waves in a storm. At that moment, I knew that confronting her was inevitable. I sat in my car, every nerve tingling with anger and betrayal. But instead of going home, I drove across town, somewhere I knew she'd never think to look. I went to a small bar, dimly lit, with quiet corners where I could sit and think. I knew I needed to be strategic, not reactive. Losing my head now would only give her an advantage, and I wasn't about to let her keep lying to me while I fumbled in the dark. While I sipped on another bourbon, an idea began forming. If Emma was lying about the club meetings, then where was she spending her Thursday nights? I couldn't confront her without proof. She was too good at talking her way out of things, twisting words until I felt like I was the one in the wrong. No, if I wanted answers, I had to be smarter than she was. I called an old friend, Tom. Tom and I hadn't talked much since college, but we used to be close. He worked as a private investigator now, and I knew he wouldn't ask too many questions. I wasn't about to spill my marriage troubles to anyone, but Tom had always been loyal, and he didn't sugarcoat anything. "Hey, Tom. It's Matt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Matt. Long time, man. What's up?" "Listen, I need a favor," I said, choosing my words carefully. "It's about Emma. I think something's going on. She's been lying about her Thursday nights, and I need you to find out where she's actually going." Tom paused. You sure about this? Once we go down this road, there's no turning back. I'm sure, I replied firmly. There was no doubt left in me. I couldn't live another day under her spell of deceit, not knowing the truth. We made a plan. Tom would follow her next Thursday, while I played the unsuspecting husband. I had to act normal, which felt nearly impossible, but I knew it was crucial. Over the next few days, I watched her closer than ever, noticing all the little details that had slipped by before. She'd hum while texting, her lips curling into a smile that didn't belong to me. When I asked simple questions, she'd deflect, offering shallow explanations with a sweetness that now felt bitter. When Thursday finally rolled around, I was more than ready. I kissed her goodbye as usual, a knot of resentment twisting in my stomach. She gave me that familiar, hollow smile and left, telling me she'd be back late. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear, the sound of her tires fading into the night. Then I waited, staring at the clock, counting the hours. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. She's at the Mirage Inn. Room 212. I'll be outside if you need backup. The Mirage Inn. The name itself made my stomach turn. It was one of those dingy places on the edge of town, the kind where people went to stay out of sight. My chest felt tight as I grabbed my keys, trying to steady my hands. I didn't know what I'd see, but I knew I couldn't wait another second to find out. The drive there felt like a blur. When I finally reached the inn, Tom was standing outside, his face grim. She's in there with some guy. I haven't seen his face, but it's pretty clear what's going on, Tom said, voice low. He put a hand on my shoulder, but I barely felt it. My blood was boiling, my vision narrowing as I walked towards room 212. I stood outside the door, fists clenched, fighting the urge to kick it down. But then I stopped, took a deep breath. No, I wouldn't let her see my anger, not yet. I wanted to catch her off guard, leave her with nowhere to run. I knocked. There was silence for a moment, then shuffling inside. Finally, the door creaked open, and there she was, Emma, standing there in a silky robe, her face frozen in shock. Behind her, a man appeared, someone I didn't recognize, but that hardly mattered. His smirk vanished the moment he saw me, and he backed away like a coward. Matt. What are you doing here? Emma stammered, clutching her robe. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing, I said, my voice deadly calm. Her eyes darted from me to the guy, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of defiance, like she was ready to defend her lie, to make me look like the fool. You've been lying to me, Emma, I continued, stepping inside. Women's club meetings? Really? You think I'd buy that nonsense forever? Her face twisted, and instead of remorse, I saw anger. Pure, unapologetic anger. You weren't supposed to be here, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. You had no right to follow me, Matt. I had no right? I repeated, stunned at her audacity. You're the one sneaking around, lying to my face every week, and you're mad at me? Maybe if you paid more attention, I wouldn't have to, she snapped, her eyes flashing. I took a step back, her words slicing through me like glass. Her tone was filled with a coldness I'd never heard before, like I was nothing but a nuisance in her life. But in that moment, something inside me clicked. I wasn't here to beg, to fight, or to try to fix things. I was here to end it. Emma stared at me, waiting for a reaction, maybe expecting me to yell, to plead, to fight for her. But all I felt was a strange, eerie calm settling over me. I looked past her, past the guy who was slowly backing into the corner, his face pale and hands raised as if I were about to hit him. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. He had no idea he was irrelevant now, just a passing shadow in a moment that would change my life forever. Without a word, I walked over to the small table near the window, pulled out a chair, and sat down. I let the silence settle, watching her face contort in confusion. She wasn't used to this side of me, cold, calculating, utterly unfazed. "Matt, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice uncertain now, the sharp edge fading. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "I'm giving you a chance to explain yourself. But I don't want excuses, Emma. I want the truth." I gestured to the chair opposite me. "Sit." Her eyes narrowed, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She hesitated, glancing back at the guy, who was looking like he was about to faint. But she sat down, folding her arms defensively, her chin jutting out in a show of defiance. "All right, Matt," she said, forcing a laugh. "You really want the truth? Fine. I'm not happy. You've been oblivious to everything I need, to who I am. You're so wrapped up in your perfect little image of our life that you've ignored me for years. This is your fault as much as mine." I raised an eyebrow, letting her words hang in the air. She wanted me to take the blame, to feel like I'd driven her to this. But I wasn't biting. "You're really going to put this on me?" I said quietly. "You're trying to paint me as some clueless husband who forced you into lying, sneaking around with some guy in a cheap motel?" She crossed her arms tighter, glaring at me. "You think you're perfect, don't you, Matt? Well, newsflash, you're not. Maybe if you actually paid attention to your wife, we wouldn't be here." I nodded slowly, watching her unravel. "You're right, Emma. I haven't been perfect. But at least I haven't betrayed the person I promised to love and respect." She laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. "Respect? You call this respect? Stalking me, showing up here like some kind of detective? Who does that?" I almost pitied her. Almost. Respect is not lying to someone's face every day. Respect is being honest about who you are, instead of hiding behind a mask. I leaned forward, my voice low and controlled. "But I'm done trying to reason with you. I just wanted to give you one last chance to come clean, for your own sake." The guy behind her cleared his throat, as if trying to gather the courage to speak. He looked at Emma, then at me, and finally muttered, "Look, man, I didn't know she was married, okay? She told me she was single." Emma whipped around to face him, her eyes blazing. "Stay out of this," she snapped. "You don't get to play the victim here." I almost smirked. She was losing control, her anger spilling out in every direction. It was like watching a storm unravel, and all I had to do was stand firm in the center. I pulled out my phone and casually opened my notes. "All right, Emma. I think we're done here. I'll be filing for divorce in the morning. I'd like you to pack up and be gone by the weekend." She stared at me, mouth open, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. You're just going to end it? Like that? Without even trying to work this out?" "Work this out?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and now you're blaming me for your choices. Why would I waste another moment trying to salvage this?" Her face crumbled for a second, but she quickly masked it with anger. "Fine. You know what? Go ahead and file. But don't expect me to make this easy for you. You want a war? You've got one." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that echoed through the room. "A war? You think I'm afraid of a little chaos, Emma? You've already destroyed whatever peace we had. So go ahead. But you're not going to drag me down with you." I turned to leave, ignoring her angry protests. But just as I reached the door, she called after me. "Matt. You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, there's a lot about me you don't know," she hissed, her voice filled with venom. "You're not the only one with secrets." I paused, hand on the doorknob, and glanced back at her. "Is that supposed to scare me?" She smiled, a twisted, unsettling smile that sent a chill down my spine. Maybe it should. In that moment, I saw a side of her I'd never seen, a darkness I hadn't realized she was capable of. She was no longer the woman I'd married, she was a stranger, a shadow with no warmth, no remorse. I left without another word, but as I walked away, a strange feeling of unease crept over me. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was the beginning of something much darker. Emma had made her move, but so had I. And now, we were locked in a game neither of us could walk away from. The night air felt cold against my skin as I got back into my car. I drove off, my mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. The weekend came faster than I expected, each day blending into the next as I went through the motions. I filed the papers Friday morning, getting everything set in motion while Emma was conveniently out, leaving me alone in the house. The silence was suffocating, but I kept my mind busy, focused. I knew she'd come back that evening, and I knew she'd have something up her sleeve. The way she'd smiled at me back at the motel? That wasn't a farewell, it was a warning. Sure enough, just as the sun started to set, her car pulled up in the driveway. I watched from the living room window as she stepped out, an unusual, confident swagger in her walk. She wasn't the woman who'd been caught, she was a woman ready to fight. She strutted in, glancing around as if she'd never lived here. "So, where are the divorce papers, Matt?" she asked, her tone light, casual, almost bored. "On the dining table. I assume you'll have your lawyer look them over." She laughed, pulling off her coat and tossing it onto the couch. "Oh, I'll be looking them over, all right." She leaned in, her smile unsettlingly calm. "But I think you'll be surprised by a few things I've prepared." I could feel her arrogance filling the room, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'd spent the past few days preparing for this, talking to Tom, gathering information, and digging into things I should have been looking at a long time ago. I had plans too, and it was time to let her know she wasn't the only one in control. "Emma, while you were out, I found some interesting things," I said, leaning back on the couch, keeping my voice casual. "Accounts under your name that I didn't know about. Money that doesn't seem to come from your job at all." Her face froze for a split second, a flicker of panic crossing her eyes before she regained her composure. "Oh, so now you're going through my finances," she sneered. "Didn't know you were that desperate." "Desperate?" I repeated, smiling. "I just want to know what else I've been missing in this perfect marriage of ours. But it's strange, isn't it? Money going in and out, with no trace of where it came from. Almost as if someone's been hiding something." Her smug expression wavered, just for a second. "Oh, please. You think a little money is going to change anything? You don't have the guts to go through with this, Matt. You've always been soft, easy to manipulate." I felt a surge of anger but kept my tone steady. "Is that what you think? That I'll just back down, let you walk away with half of everything while you lie and cheat?" I stood up, took a step toward her, my voice dropping. "You're wrong, Emma. I've already filed, and I'm not backing down. And those accounts? They're just the beginning." She laughed again, but it sounded forced. "Oh, Matt, you think you're so clever. But you have no idea who you're dealing with." Her voice dropped, her eyes narrowing. "There's more at play here than you know. This little war you've started? It won't end the way you think." I didn't flinch, didn't break eye contact. "Go ahead, Emma. Do your worst. But remember, I know things too. And you're not as untouchable as you think." The words hit her hard, and for a moment, she looked genuinely rattled. But she quickly masked it, flipping her hair and forcing a smile. "Well, enjoy playing detective. It's cute, really. But you'll regret it." With that, she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, my mind racing. I knew her threats weren't empty. This wasn't just about the affair anymore, she had a plan, something hidden in those accounts, in her little secrets. And whatever it was, I knew it wouldn't be easy to uncover. She'd been playing this game for a long time, and now I had to learn the rules fast. The next morning, I met with Tom again, laying out everything I'd found, the hidden accounts, the unexplained transfers, even a few suspicious emails I'd managed to pull from her computer. He looked through everything, frowning. "This isn't just a normal affair, Matt," he said slowly, his voice filled with caution. "There's something bigger here. These transactions, they don't look like they're for personal use. They're routed through offshore accounts, hidden under aliases. This is a whole other level." "What are you saying?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "I'm saying Emma's involved in something. And whatever it is, it's shady. You're not just dealing with a betrayal anymore. You're dealing with something that could get messy, legally speaking." I swallowed, trying to process his words. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, wasn't just cheating, she was hiding something far more dangerous. "Do you think she's into something illegal?" I asked, barely believing the words as they left my mouth. Tom's expression darkened. "Could be. But if I were you, I'd tread carefully. Whatever she's involved in, she's hiding it well. And if she knows you're onto her, she might make things difficult, legally and otherwise." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I'd been so focused on the betrayal that I hadn't even considered this side of things. This wasn't just about my marriage, this was about my safety, my reputation, maybe even my future. "So what should I do?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of anger and dread. Tom leaned forward, his expression serious. "Keep gathering evidence, but stay quiet. If she's into something illegal, you'll need to cover your tracks, make sure nothing ties back to you. But remember, she's smart, and if she feels cornered, she might do something desperate." I nodded, the weight of his words settling on me. I hadn't expected any of this, a bitter divorce, maybe, but nothing like this shadowy game of deception. But one thing was clear, Emma wasn't just a cheater, she was hiding secrets that went deeper than I'd ever imagined. As I left Tom's office, I felt a strange surge of determination. I was no longer the clueless husband, blindsided by betrayal. Now I was a man on a mission, and this wasn't just about revenge. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter how dark it might be. Emma wanted a war. She'd just declared one. And I was ready to fight. Over the next few days, I moved quietly, watching and listening. I was careful, so careful that even Emma's sharp instincts couldn't detect what I was doing. I knew she was still plotting, her eyes darting with suspicion every time she passed me in the house. But I stayed cool, stayed invisible. This time, I wouldn't just catch her, I'd trap her. Tom and I met in secret, exchanging updates like conspirators. He'd managed to trace one of Emma's offshore accounts back to a shell company, a bogus operation, linked to shady deals that I hadn't fully wrapped my mind around yet. But there was more, the shell company wasn't just hers. It was in partnership with someone, and that someone wasn't just any random name. It was her business associate from out of town, a man named Derek Crane. The name struck a nerve, though I couldn't place why. Maybe it was the way Emma had let it slip a few weeks ago, saying she had business in New York with Derek, making it sound so routine. Now it made sense. Derek wasn't a client, he was her accomplice, her partner in whatever scam they were running. She'd been using me as a cover, a shield, while she and Derek ran their little empire right under my nose. One night, I found Emma in the kitchen, typing furiously on her laptop. She didn't see me enter, and for a second, I stood there, watching her. There was a coldness in her, a focus that felt inhuman, like she was just a shell, operating on greed and deception. I was done playing her games. "Working on something important?" I asked, making her jump. She snapped the laptop shut, eyes flashing with annoyance. "Don't sneak up on me like that, Matt." I smirked. "Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt." It looked serious. "Thought I'd check in." She forced a smile. "Just some late-night work. Nothing for you to worry about." I leaned against the counter, meeting her gaze. "Funny. Seems like you have a lot going on these days." She stiffened, but quickly covered it up, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "Not that you'd care, right?" "Oh, I care," I replied smoothly. "In fact, I think I care a lot more than you realize." Her eyes narrowed, but she stayed quiet. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face. She didn't know what I knew, but she sensed something was off. I left the kitchen, pretending to be unbothered, but in truth, I was just waiting. I needed her to make the next move, to feel just paranoid enough to get careless. The next morning, I received a text from Tom. "Derek Crane has been asking around about you. Looks like Emma's worried." I let out a humorless laugh. Emma thought she was putting pressure on me by bringing Derek into it, as if his shady connections and money would intimidate me. But that only made me more determined. If she thought she could use him to shake me up, she'd find out soon enough that I wasn't the man she thought I was. I sent Tom a reply, an idea forming in my head: let him find me. I want him to see I'm not backing down. Over the next few days, I set my own trap. I staged my movements, leaving clues for Derek, knowing he'd be watching. I dropped hints that I was meeting with lawyers, that I'd been digging into our joint finances. And sure enough, it worked. Tom confirmed that Derek had been following my trail, growing anxious by the day. Emma must have been feeding him lies, telling him I was harmless, but the truth was, she was starting to panic. I could see it in her eyes, the way she snapped at me over the smallest things, the way her mask slipped when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening, I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. An unknown number flashed on my screen. I picked up, already knowing who it was. "Matt Williams?" a deep, gruff voice asked. "This is him," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "This is Derek Crane. I believe you've been looking into my business with your wife." "That's unfortunate." I let out a laugh. "Unfortunate for who, Derek?" A silence, then a low chuckle on his end. "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with, Matt. Emma and I have been very productive together. I'd hate for anything to get in the way of that. Especially if it's a curious husband who doesn't know when to back off. I think you've got it wrong, Derek. You're the one intruding on my life. You've been using my wife as a pawn in whatever mess you've got going. So tell me, what are you going to do about it?" He hesitated, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. Derek wasn't expecting resistance, he was expecting fear. He was used to people backing down, intimidated by his reputation. But he didn't know that I'd been pushed past fear a long time ago. "I'd be careful, Matt," he warned, trying to sound threatening. "People get hurt when they stick their nose where it doesn't belong." "Consider me warned, Derek," I replied, ending the call. After I hung up, I immediately called Tom, giving him the go-ahead. It was time to put my plan into motion. Tom had connections in law enforcement, enough to dig a little deeper into Derek's business dealings, enough to make some noise. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to take them down. The next night, I came home to find Emma packing. She was stuffing clothes into a suitcase, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. She looked up when I entered, a flash of fear in her eyes. "What's going on, Emma?" I asked, feigning ignorance. She forced a smile. "I need a break. Maybe some time apart will be good for us." "Oh, really?" I said, stepping closer. "Is that what Derek thinks, too?" Her face went pale. What what are you talking about? You can drop the act, Emma. I know everything, about the accounts, the shell company, and Derek. And by tomorrow morning, the police will know everything, too. For the first time, she looked genuinely terrified. Her voice was barely a whisper. Matt, please. You don't know what you're doing. Derek, he won't just let this go. I leaned in close, my voice barely above a murmur. That's the difference between us, Emma. I'm not afraid of Derek. And I'm not afraid of you. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, shaken and defeated. This wasn't just about revenge or justice anymore, it was about reclaiming the life I'd lost to her lies. And by the time I was done, both Emma and Derek would know that they'd messed with the wrong man. As I left the house, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. And as for Emma? She'd soon discover that she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. That night, I didn't go far. I parked a few blocks away, watching my house from a distance, waiting to see Emma's next move. She wasn't the type to give up easily, and I knew she'd have a final card to play. Sure enough, about an hour later, her car pulled out of the driveway, heading into the night. I started my engine, keeping a safe distance as she sped through town, weaving between cars, as if she was in a hurry to leave everything behind. She drove to the one place I'd expected, a sleek, modern building on the edge of downtown, Derek's office. Her car disappeared into the underground garage, and I followed, parking outside and waiting. After a few tense minutes, I saw them emerge from the elevator into the lobby, Emma, visibly upset, and Derek, his hand on her shoulder, murmuring something I couldn't hear. They didn't look like a couple. They looked like partners in crime, cornered and planning an escape. I snapped a few photos from the car, capturing the desperation on their faces. This was it, the evidence I needed. I sent the photos straight to Tom, with a quick message, "Make sure the authorities see this." I watched as they climbed into Derek's black SUV and sped off. I knew they were going to regroup somewhere, maybe find a way out of this mess. I followed at a safe distance, every muscle tense as I wondered what their next move would be. To my surprise, they drove out of town, heading for an abandoned industrial area on the outskirts. They pulled into a rundown warehouse, the place looking almost forgotten, rusted and overgrown with weeds. I parked a safe distance away, watching through binoculars as they stepped inside. It was a clever hideout, but they were too panicked to realize that they'd been followed. I waited a few minutes, then got out of the car and approached the warehouse. My footsteps were silent on the gravel, the only sound being the faint hum of distant traffic. The old building loomed above me, its broken windows like hollow eyes, watching. I found a back entrance, slipping inside undetected. The place was cold and smelled of rust and stale air. I crept down the hallway, my heart pounding, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. As I neared the main area, I could hear their voices echoing through the empty space. "I told you he's on to us." Emma's voice was frantic, her anger tinged with fear. "This wasn't part of the plan, Derek. He knows everything." Derek's voice was calm, almost mocking. "Relax. He's just bluffing. He doesn't have the guts to take us down. And even if he does, well, we've handled bigger threats than him." Emma wasn't convinced. "This isn't some random deal, Derek. This is my husband. If he exposes us, we're both finished." I stepped closer, staying in the shadows, listening to their twisted confessions with an eerie calm. They thought they had the upper hand, thought I was too weak to follow through. But they didn't realize I'd been playing them just as much as they were trying to play me. Derek's voice dropped to a chilling tone. "Look, if he's a problem, we'll take care of him. It's simple. I've done it before, and I can do it again." I froze, every nerve on edge. This wasn't just about money or cheating, Derek was dangerous, and Emma knew it. She'd tied herself to someone ruthless, someone who wouldn't hesitate to get rid of me if it meant saving his own skin. Emma hesitated, her voice wavering. You don't mean that. You're not really going to. Derek's laugh was cold. You think I got here by playing nice? If he's a threat, he's disposable. And so are you, if you don't get it together. For a split second, I felt a wave of fear, realizing the kind of person I was dealing with. But that fear quickly turned to resolve. Derek thought he was untouchable, that he could scare me into backing down. But I wasn't going anywhere. I had one last move to make, and it was going to end this once and for all. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and dialed Tom. He picked up on the first ring. They're here, I whispered. And they're planning something bigger than I thought. Hold tight, Matt, he replied. We've already tipped off the feds. They're on their way. I stayed hidden, watching as Derek and Emma continued arguing, their voices growing louder and more desperate. They had no idea that within minutes, the entire place would be swarming with federal agents, that their perfect little scheme was about to crash down around them. The sirens came first, distant at first, then louder, echoing through the empty warehouse. Emma and Derek froze, their eyes widening as the red and blue lights flashed through the broken windows. Run! Derek shouted, grabbing Emma's arm and pulling her toward a side exit. But it was too late. Agents poured in through every door, surrounding them, guns drawn, voices shouting commands. I stayed hidden, watching as they were cornered, their faces twisted in terror. They tried to lie, to talk their way out of it, but the agents had everything: records, photos, evidence of their offshore dealings. Every lie, every scheme they'd built was crumbling before them. I watched as they handcuffed Derek first, shoving him against the wall, his arrogant smirk finally gone. Then they turned to Emma, her face pale, eyes wide as they read her rights. She looked around frantically, searching for a way out, but there was none. Our eyes met for a brief second, and in that moment, she knew. She knew I'd been the one who brought them down, the one who'd unraveled everything. And for the first time, I saw something I hadn't expected: fear. Real, genuine fear. As they led her away, her voice trembled. Matt, you don't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't want this. But I just watched, silent, feeling a strange satisfaction settle over me. I didn't need to say anything. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As the agents cleared the scene, Tom walked over, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You did it, Matt. They're done. It's over. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off me. It was over. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, it was all behind me now. As I drove away from that warehouse, I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd walked through fire and come out the other side, stronger, wiser. Emma had tried to pull me into her darkness, but in the end, I'd pulled her into the light, exposing every secret she'd hidden. And now? Now I could finally start over, free from her twisted web. The satisfaction of that night faded quicker than I'd expected. In the days following Emma and Derek's arrests, I found myself haunted by a strange emptiness. I thought I'd feel relief, freedom, even triumph, but all I felt was a gnawing sense of unfinished business. Despite all I'd uncovered, I still had questions that refused to let me go. Then, out of nowhere, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize: meet me. There are things you don't know about your wife and Derek. The address was to a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, the kind of place no one would notice. Against my better judgment, I went. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was one final piece of the puzzle I needed, one last thread to pull. When I arrived, a woman was waiting at a corner table, her face hidden by a wide-brimmed hat and dark sunglasses. She looked up as I approached, gesturing for me to sit. Matt Williams, she said, her voice low. I wasn't sure you'd come. I looked her over, trying to place her face. You have me at a disadvantage. Who are you? She slid her sunglasses down, revealing sharp, calculating eyes. I'm someone who worked with Derek, and, indirectly, with your wife. But not in the way you think. I folded my arms, leaning back. Go on. She paused, glancing around as if making sure no one else could hear. Derek wasn't just your typical conman. He was part of something bigger, an underground network, if you will. People with resources, connections, who specialize in manipulating others. Derek was one of their best operators. Your wife wasn't just his lover, she was his protégé. I clenched my jaw, feeling a new wave of disgust. So she was being groomed for this? The woman shook her head. Not exactly. Emma was willing, eager even. She was drawn to the thrill, to the money, to the power. She didn't just get tangled up with Derek by accident, she sought him out. She wanted to build her own empire, and Derek was her way in. The weight of her words hit me hard. Emma hadn't just fallen into Derek's trap, she'd embraced it. She'd actively chosen that path, knowing full well what it meant. But here's the part you don't know, the woman continued, lowering her voice. Emma wasn't planning on sticking with Derek. She was going to betray him, just like she betrayed you. She had her own accounts, her own clients, and a plan to take Derek down and take over his operation. By the time you exposed them, she was already setting things in motion. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Emma's betrayal went deeper than I'd realized. She hadn't just turned her back on me, she'd turned her back on everyone, even the man she'd claimed to love. So why tell me this now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Why help me understand her darkness? What do you get out of this? The woman leaned in, her expression calculating. Derek's network doesn't like loose ends. When someone crosses them, they want closure, not scandal. With Emma in jail, that's one more liability off the board. But they need to make sure she's truly cut off from everything, that she won't have a way back in. And you're the only person who can guarantee that. I stared at her, unsure if I believed her story, but something told me she was telling the truth. Emma's world had been built on lies and schemes, a world that didn't allow for loose ends. The people she'd once allied herself with would turn on her the moment she was no longer useful. She'd dug her own grave, and now I had the power to decide how deep it would go. The woman slid a piece of paper across the table, her eyes cold. Sign this statement. It confirms everything you found, every betrayal, every crime. It ensures Emma has no ties left to pull herself back up. And if she tries, well, you won't have to worry about her anymore. I took the paper, my hand steady despite the turmoil inside me. In one swift motion, I signed it, sealing her fate without hesitation. Emma had played with fire, and now she would be left to burn in the ashes of her own making. But as I left the cafe, a strange realization hit me. By severing Emma's ties to Derek's world, I hadn't just protected myself, I'd gained power, the kind of quiet, dangerous power she had once coveted. I was now in possession of secrets that could destroy more than just one person. And while I had no intention of using them, I knew that if I ever found myself needing an edge, I'd have it. The following week, Emma called me from jail, her voice filled with desperation. Matt, please, they're coming after me. You don't understand, Derek's people, they don't forgive. I remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. Please, I need your help, she continued, her tone shifting from anger to fear. I know I hurt you, but I'm in real danger. You have to protect me. I took a deep breath, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. Emma, you made your choices. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed everyone, even the people you thought you could manipulate. You thought you could have it all. But you're alone now, and I'm done saving you. Her silence was palpable, her anger slowly transforming into a resigned acceptance. She knew I was her last lifeline, and I'd just let her go. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life quietly, free from her poison, free from the shadows of her past. Emma's betrayal had pushed me to the edge, but it had also given me something unexpected, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. I never heard from her again. And as for Derek's people? They never came after me. They knew I wasn't part of Emma's games. I was merely the man she'd underestimated, the man who'd turned her own ambition back on her. And with that, I walked away, stronger, wiser, and more at peace than I'd ever thought possible. Months passed, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Emma was gone, Derek's operation had unraveled, and I was left to pick up the pieces, one quiet day after another. The weight of her betrayal had lifted, replaced by a steady resolve to leave it all behind. I'd returned to my work, rebuilt connections with old friends, and even dared to imagine a future untainted by lies. But just as I felt ready to move on, an unexpected package arrived on my doorstep. It was a small, unmarked envelope with a simple return address from an unknown sender. Inside was a single USB drive and a handwritten note: "Before you turn the page, understand the whole story. The truth is never as simple as you think." There was no signature, no clues. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop, curious to see what remnants of Emma's twisted world might still linger. The drive held several folders, each labeled with dates spanning years, long before I'd suspected anything was amiss. Inside were videos, documents, and emails, each one chronicling Emma's careful manipulation, her double life, and her involvement with Derek. But what shocked me wasn't her betrayal, it was the realization that she had been preparing for something far more sinister. One video file caught my attention. It was a grainy security feed from what looked like a dimly lit office, taken about 2 years ago. The footage showed Emma and Derek in the middle of a heated argument. She looked furious, pushing him away, her voice barely audible through the static. "Do you really think I'd stay in this forever?" she spat, her face twisted with anger. "I have my own plan, Derek. You're just a means to an end." Derek laughed, cold and unfazed. "You think you're going to outsmart me? You're still that naive girl who thinks she can play with the big boys. But if you cross me, Emma, you'll regret it." Emma's eyes flashed with something I hadn't seen before, fear mixed with a fierce determination. "I don't need you," she hissed. "And if you try to stop me, I'll take you down first." In that moment, I realized that Emma hadn't just been caught up in Derek's world, she'd been planning to take over it, to replace him. Their partnership wasn't just a toxic affair, it was a battle for control. And she'd been preparing to eliminate him long before I'd uncovered anything. But as I watched the footage, another twist emerged, one I never saw coming. Emma didn't plan on stopping at Derek. There were mentions of bank accounts in my name, staged messages between us that painted me as her accomplice. She'd crafted a paper trail that tied me to her schemes, making it look like I'd been part of her operation all along. Her plan had been to frame me if things ever went south. If she couldn't outrun Derek's people, she'd leave me holding the bag. My blood turned to ice. Emma had anticipated everything. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, she'd intended to drag me down with her from the start, covering her tracks so perfectly that I would have been left with nothing but her debts and crimes. And then it hit me, she'd had one final contingency plan, a trap I'd walked right into. I scanned through the documents, my heart pounding. She'd filed false bank statements, opened joint accounts in our names, created fake conversations. And there, at the end, was a single encrypted folder labeled, "In case of Matt's departure." I clicked it open, revealing dozens of documents implicating me in fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Everything was so carefully laid out that it would be impossible to prove I wasn't involved. Emma had left a ticking time bomb, a way to ruin me from behind bars if I ever turned on her. The moment I'd filed for divorce, the moment I'd exposed her, I'd unknowingly triggered her final revenge. I sat back, the weight of her last betrayal sinking in. Even in her downfall, she'd been one step ahead, leaving a legacy of destruction meant to shatter me long after she was gone. I'd thought I'd won, but Emma had left me with a curse, a life shackled to her crimes, her lies, and the mess she'd woven around me. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Tom, my old friend, the one who'd helped me unravel Emma's deceit. "Matt," he said, his voice tense. "You're not going to like this, but the feds received a tip, an anonymous file implicating you in everything Derek and Emma were involved in. They think you might have been the mastermind all along." My heart sank. She'd done it. She'd found a way to destroy me from the grave, and now I was the one being hunted. What do I do?" I whispered, a chill spreading through me. There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "Run. You need to disappear. The evidence against you is airtight, and if they catch you, they'll never believe you were innocent. Emma made sure of that." I sat there, numb, realizing that I had no choice. Emma had planned her revenge perfectly, leaving me with a single, brutal decision: vanish or go down as the villain in her story. She'd won, even in her defeat, because she'd crafted a trap so deep, so intricate, that I'd never escape. As I packed a bag and prepared to leave behind everything I knew, I finally understood the depth of her darkness. She'd never just been my wife. She'd been a stranger, a shadow, a master manipulator who'd played the long game to perfection. And as I slipped into the night, a fugitive in a world of lies she'd created, I realized I'd never truly known her at all.